Okay, so what I want to talk about today is focus techniques, and these are the things or the apps that I use while I'm studying in order to be more productive and to get more done and to not spend time scrolling through Instagram, because we all know that's what we'd rather be doing than studying. Help. Okay, so yeah, as I said, this kind of breaks it down to apps, but you can also use different apps. The apps just each use a different technique. And as usual, I have an article written on my iPad that I'm going to refer to because I find that writing down my thoughts is much better because I can edit them and make sure I have everything I want to say and that I've said all in the way I want to say it without just waffling and without contradicting myself. So you'll notice in a lot of these videos that it's stuff I've already written down as a blog post or an article in a zine, and I'm reading it to you because I understand that most people don't want to read blog posts. That's fine, so I'm gonna read them to you, essentially, because it's much easier to write a blog post than it is to script a video, but that's essentially what I'm doing. So, sometimes I do just sit down at my laptop and study, but I find I'm much more productive, especially when I plan on studying for the whole day if I use one of the following focus techniques. There are 3 techniques that I want to talk about. The first is the one that I used mostly in sixth form, but it's probably, I'm the only person I know that does this, but I love doing this, and that is to use a stopwatch. This was a technique I used a lot during sixth form, and I found it particularly effective when I didn't know how long I would have to study for each session. So in sixth form, we would have lessons throughout the day, and in year 13 I was taking 3 A-levels, so I normally had 2 or 3 lessons a day, spaced throughout the day, and in between that I could study, and I could also study when I got home, but I wouldn't know if I would get interrupted. I wouldn't know, sometimes I'd have 1 hour, sometimes I'd have 2 hours. In the evening I wouldn't know what time we were eating dinner maybe. So when you've got lots of time to do studying, but you don't know necessarily that you've got a chunk here and a chunk here, I found this technique great. What I would do was I would literally just use the stopwatch on my phone, and whenever I was studying I would set it to be running. And I would often set a goal for myself for the day. This was usually 4 hours in sixth form, and that was a really nice amount for me, I thought. 4 hours of studying plus 2 or 3 hours of lessons a day was what I would try and do. And literally, as soon as I sat down to study, I would press the button, and when I stopped studying, I would press pause. And then the next time I came back, if that was an hour later, if that was 2 hours later, if it was 4 minutes later, I would press the thing again. And the great thing about this is that it would also help me to avoid procrastinating, because if I wanted to go on my phone, so I would press the stopwatch, I press start, and then I'd lock my phone. And then if for some reason I did want to go and reply to a text message or check Instagram, I would unlock my phone, the stopwatch app would still be open, I would press pause, I would do whatever I wanted to do on my phone, then I would press run, close my phone, and carry on. This meant I could keep track of how much time I was actually being productive, because I found that when using other techniques, it didn't account for the fact that you might spend, if you're going to do a 25-minute study session, you might end up spending 5 of those minutes on your phone. So I found this was a really great way to avoid doing that, and it discouraged me from going on my phone because I knew that if I didn't reply to that text message, I would gain more minutes, whereas if I replied to that text message, I'm going to have to work longer into the evening in order to reach my goal. The having a goal makes the difference, because it's going to take you longer to get to that goal if you keep procrastinating and doing other stuff, so this really discourages you from going on your phone. So I think this is a really great technique, as I said, especially when you don't know how long each study session that you're going to do throughout the day is going to be, when you can't necessarily plan, I'm going to do Pomodoro today, because Pomodoro requires you to have certain time periods. If you don't have that, I think this is the best technique. As I said, I invented this, but I love it, it works. So, yeah. Secondly, let's talk about Forest. Forest. Everyone's favourite. Forest is an app that blocks your phone for an amount of time and grows a pretend tree in order to encourage you to be productive. If you exit the app before the tree has finished growing, it dies. There are lots of apps that use this principle. Forest is just one of the first ones that came along, and so it's the one that I use because it's the most popular. I continue to use it because I like to be able to see my history over time and my lifetime minutes and things like that. I like to use this when I'm studying for 2 or 3 hours in the library. That's when I find that this is the most useful. Or if I'm sat at my desk in the evening, because I hate evening studying and I'm very good at going on my phone in that time. So that's when I really need something that blocks my phone. As painful as it is, I find the best thing to do is to force myself to grow a tree for an entire hour or for 2 hours, and then I have no choice but to focus for that time. I might still take 2 or 3 minute breaks where I look around the room, but I can't go on my phone. Phones are actually, and social media is designed to be addictive. I didn't realise this until someone pointed it out, but Instagram is designed to be addictive. That is why it's really difficult to take a 2-minute Instagram break. It will turn into 10 or 15. So yes, I take 2-minute breaks where I look around the room, or I go to the loo, or where I talk to a friend and ask them a question, but it doesn't turn into 15 minutes, and that's the best thing about Forest. I find this to be the most effective technique in terms of getting me to work, but I don't find it sustainable if I need to study for an entire day. I become bored and find other ways to procrastinate, including going on the internet on my tablet or my laptop. So as I said, I find that's why I use all 3 techniques, because I find them all brilliant for different things. So if I have an entire study day, I tend not to use Forest, as I said, because it's just not sustainable trying to study for long chunks. It just doesn't work. So I find this perfect for like a nice 2-hour window. I will just block my phone and do some work. But the point being that I think a lot of people praise Forest and be like, oh my god, this is the only thing that works, the only thing that gets me to study. I do like 12 hours a day. And I think it's just important to recognise that different things work for different people. And I personally can't use Forest all day, and so it's fine if you can't too. I think a lot of people feel shamed or embarrassed that they can't study for 8 hours a day using this technique. And I'm here to tell you that that's okay. Find a different way that works for you. Because we're not all the same human being, and we shouldn't be shamed by the fact that other people can use a technique that we can't. Lastly, let's talk about Pomodoro, because I love myself that old tomato timer. The traditional Pomodoro technique, although you can change the time windows if you want to, is that you study for 25 minutes and then you take a 5-minute break, and you do this 4 times. And the 4th time, instead of taking a 5-minute break, you take maybe a 30-minute break. Obviously these times can be customised, and there's hundreds of apps that do this automatically for you, so I don't really have one in particular to recommend. The one I use is called 25 minutes, but there's nothing special about it. There are loads of them. My favourite time to use this is on a Sunday, when I plan on studying for the whole day. I don't know why, but Sunday always seems to be the one day of the week that I have no plans, and I'm like, right, study day. Let's just study the entire day. Although the breaks mean that you get few hours done over a longer time, I find this to be much more sustainable if I plan to study for the whole day. So if you think about it, using this technique, in 2.5 hours, you only get an hour and 40 minutes of studying done. So it is a lot less. If you're studying for the entire day, you do notice that adds up. There are an extra, you could have done an extra 3 or 4 hours of studying. But as I said, if I'm trying to study for the whole day, I wouldn't be able to do that anyway. So it's a pointless argument, if you know what I mean. So if I'm studying for a shorter amount of time, I find it's better to just plough through. But if I plan on studying for the whole day, I find this a really great way of breaking it up and making sure it's sustainable and making sure I can keep studying for the whole day. My pro tip is that smartphones and social media, as I said, can be addictive, and it's really hard to take a 5-minute Instagram break in that break, because it's just really difficult to get yourself to put your phone down at the end. And so for me, I've found the best thing to do in these 5-minute breaks is tidying up and random chores, and I will do these over the 5-minute breaks. It's much less addictive, it gets you up off your feet, and then it's much easier to return to your work. Quite often at the start of the day, I will write myself a list of things that I want to do. So these will be things like tidy my room, hoover the floor, wash my makeup brushes, things like that. And I will write them down, and I will do them over the 5-minute breaks. And if the job is longer than 5 minutes, don't worry, just do it over 2 or 3 breaks. So for example, washing my makeup brushes takes me about 15-20 minutes. So that will fill up 3 or 4 breaks, and I will just leave it in a reasonable state, and I'll go back half an hour later and finish off, or do the next bit. So that is all of my advice. And the final thing that I've wrote is that this is how I track my studying for when I do 100 hours of study, using any 3 of these techniques. means that I'm quantifying how much work I'm doing, and then if I'm doing my 100 hours of study technique, which is a principle that I made, go to Louise Does Life to find out more, but I have found that because these things all measure the amount of time you're studying, it's then really easy at the end of the day to fill in my 100 hours of studying tracker. So that's all I have to say for today. I am Louise. If you want to learn more about me, head to Instagram, Louise Does Life. That's my main social media, and I have a website with lots of resources and printables. And you can DM me, ask me questions, leave comments here. I would love to know what you think of these study techniques, which ones you use. Yeah, all wonderful. Okay, thank you. I will see you